The consequence, that college teaching is being deprofessionalized, and the contingent faculty do not have academic freedom or any real role in shared governance, needs to be more widely and deeply understood by all of us. The bottom line is that tenure is thus no longer enough to protect academic freedom. We need legally enforceable union contracts if we want to secure the central nature of our authority. If I had to select one characteristic anecdote to prove my point that we need some other form of guarantee of academic freedom, it would be this. When I travel the country, for the last 5 years or so, part-time faculty members repeatedly have told me they decided not to assign a particular book or essay because they were afraid their students or their students' parents might be offended and thus that they would lose their jobs. Most tenured faculty with job protection have never had to think such a thought. Those contingent faculty members need union grievance procedures to protect them from abuse. And the inexorable rise in the percentage of contingent faculty nationally now has a new component. It's only a month or two old. A move is afoot in Louisiana and elsewhere to offer tenured humanities faculty a choice. Lose your job based on false claims of budgetary crisis, or accept a part-time position at the same institution at half the salary. Those who agree to take the offer of a contingent position, either on an annual or semester by semester contract, will then, because they accept that offer, they're going to be considered to have voluntarily given up tenure and its employment security and its guarantees of academic freedom. Again, only a union contract can protect against abuses that are emerging that we really have never even seen before. At the same time, the defense of academic freedom offers a rallying point and a common interest for all the cohorts of faculty. If humanists are losing their both faculty lines and their infrastructural support, and thus the ability to exercise their academic freedom, if you're out of a job, academic freedom doesn't mean all that much. I mean, you can use it at the supermarket, but that's not all that terrific. Scientists, in many cases, are losing their academic freedom in a rather different way. The traditional pressure on scientists to obtain grants became something quite different when funding began to shift from peer-reviewed government grants to corporate contracts. The pressure to produce marketable products suddenly trumped a scientist's right to pursue the research he or she would choose to do. And the pressure to opt for the project that will bring in the most cash, almost always now an individual corporate contract or a strategic corporate alliance that binds whole groups of faculty to the corporate wheel, is increasing. It's only a matter of time before an increasing number of scientists realize they are really working not for a university, but for a corporation. They're called a faculty member, but they're really a corporate employee. They are not doing the jobs they were trained for, and they're not living the lives they thought they were choosing when they opted to become faculty members. Yet scientists, on the other hand, are less vulnerable to having whole departments and programs closed. The public appreciates the more dramatic benefits of medical research, engineering breakthroughs, and so forth. Humanities disciplines, meanwhile, have relatively few products to celebrate. And many humanists are ill-prepared to define their broader aims and have failed to communicate the changing nature of their fields to the public. The truth is that the failure to acquaint the public gradually with the transformed epistemologies of the humanities means they're not going to like what they hear if we go out on the road now. For we have learned that the eternal verities are not so reliable. We've learned that the past is always in flux, that far from simply preserving a venerable history, the humanities are dedicated of necessity to reconstructing it. It's a process that will never end. We've learned that text can never speak with a unitary or transhistorical voice, that they are inherently plural and self-contradictory. The 20th century, meanwhile, which pivots on the Holocaust and Hiroshima, demonstrated that human nature can embrace any sort of organized violence, any imaginable evil, that there are no transcendent values, indeed that transcendence is simply a cultural product of history, nothing more. This is not what the public wants to hear, but rather than suppress it, I believe we must assert these values with greater force and clarity than we have before. That's what I tried to do briefly in a September 2nd piece about the fierce humanities in the Chronicle of Higher Education. I did not plead for tolerance. I did not ask for funding. I didn't manufacture weak arguments about the social benefits of communicating core humanistic values. I didn't say the humanities would take the rough edges off the profit motive, either by providing rationalizations for our greed or by offering compensatory cultural investments in the arts. Instead, I describe a Holocaust poetry course that I teach in terms of the burdens that it places on my students. And I wrote, one purpose of the course is to help all of us confront the infinite human capacity for evil and to evaluate poetry's capacity to bear witness to it. Anne Frank is famously applauded for asserting that people are basically good, but she did not have the opportunity to reaffirm her faith after Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. Holocaust poetry demonstrates that human beings are not basically anything, that they await culture, family, society, institutions, and accident to be shaped into what they are. All physically possible actions and behaviors, all arguments capable of articulation, fall within the parameters of the human. Nothing is guaranteed, nothing is prohibited, nothing too monstrous to wear a human face. And then the seminar shows us how the music of literary witness is undone by the facts it confronts. This places a burden of pain on me and my students. It makes it less easy for any of us to live our lives. It complicates our self-understanding and our understanding of others. And it should haunt the years as we go forward. At the large Holocaust Memorial in Berlin, you will walk among a large field of massive granite blocks, ranged row upon row. But the stone pathways amongst the monoliths are not level. They undulate. And the blocks themselves are not perfectly squared. They are subtly angled and off-kilter. It's a monument to seriality and rationality unhinged, to uncertain knowledge, to human reason faltering and failing. It is often said, contestedly, the Holocaust represents the dark side of the Enlightenment, the abstraction of reason, planning, and enumeration, and their severance from all value. How many cans of gas does it take to kill 1 million Jews? Is it more efficient to gas them or strangle them? In the basement, beneath the gas chambers at Buchenwald, you can count the hooks on the walls that serve the strangling option. Keep a count. Assess the cost and benefits. Now, I'm not foolish enough to imagine that the various cultural products that share an illusion that everything that can be rationally accounted for are comparable. They're not. But I think we should pause before accepting such reason nonetheless, despite how much our government urges us to. For what I teach and for the fierce humanities and social sciences in general, the assessment, accountability, and quantifiable outcomes movement is nothing less than a benighted Enlightenment fantasy of mastering the unmasterable, of quantifying what cannot be measured. If you want to adopt its protocols, that's fine. That's academic freedom. Just don't try to impose them on me. That's academic freedom as well. The notion that all values are contingent, which is one of the unflinching lessons of the Holocaust, that all perception is mediated, does not mean, despite what the right wing says, that there is nothing outside linguistic quality. Rather, it means you cannot access it outside language and the semiotics of meaning. Nor does relativism, as the right always claims, equal nihilism. But relativism does mean that values are never more than a terrain of advocacy, struggle, and a record of historical behavior. Once again, the public is not massing at the gates of the campus to hear these things.